Here's what typically happens. You throw in a backing track, you start playing a little bit, figuring out the key, figuring out your comfort zone, and at some point, you land on the first position of the minor pentatonic scale. That's when it happens. You start playing the same thing over and over. This is typically triggered as soon as you bend this note. Okay, pause for a second. Let's think about this. Why does this happen? Why do we get stuck in those comfortable patterns that are kind of overheard? The first reason is that typically we start getting stuck and boring when our notes are too sequential. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or decreasing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's very predictable. And the second reason we get stuck is that our solos are very influenced by our fingers. Now let's face it, they're pretty lazy. All right, so how do we fix that? Well, we've got to figure out a way to regain control over the fingers. Okay, for this, you need to trust me. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but I promise that this is the way you're gonna get unstuck. In order to work on this, we need to do it without a backing track and without a metronome. We're gonna take away all that sense of time. Just freeze time for a moment. And we're gonna start playing a few notes very slowly, and we'll be in B minor pentatonic. As soon as you played, say, 3 notes, you need to pause and ask yourself, what do I wanna play next? The answer is typically going to be answered by your fingers. Your fingers are going to tend to want to go to a certain place. And if the first 3 notes you played were ascending, the next note is probably going to be in the next note up. Or maybe you're going to backstep and play the notes you just played, but all that to say that typically your fingers are going to go to a very close note. Let's avoid that. We're regaining control over our fingers, and we're going to visualize, just look at your guitar, and land on a note that is not really intuitive, a note that you would probably not reach. I'm going to play this one, for example. Not very intuitive for my fingers, but that's the one I'm going to play. What does it sound like? If you like it, great. If you don't like it, still give it a chance. Now here's the thing. At this point in the exercise, we're not really focused on melody. We're just focusing on reclaiming power, stopping our fingers in their tracks so that they don't play the next natural notes they want to play. And you should do this for a few minutes, and what you'll find is that these notes that are not the natural next note you want to reach are going to become somewhat natural to you. And yes, that means that we're back to square one, because now your fingers are getting comfortable with those unnatural notes. And that's okay, we're just gonna reclaim power again. So what happens in music is that at some point when you start becoming efficient on the instrument, whether it's a guitar, a piano, trumpet, it doesn't really matter, you start being so natural with it that you know that whatever you're gonna play is going to work with the backing track or the band, and you just let your fingers or your mouth or whatever is involved in the process of making that instrument work take control. Now, this reminds me a lot of what I'm doing right now, preparing this video for you. I'm not just speaking my mouth out. Actually, I kind of am, but I'm trying to think about the things I'm going to say so that there is a real message behind. That's what I want you to do when you're approaching music. After a few minutes of doing this exercise, we're going to make the process a little bit smoother, because when you're actually playing, you still want to have some kind of automatic playing, because that will allow you to think about what comes next in your improvisation. So for that, we're going to take a small concept that we figured out as we were exploring our fretboard, and we're going to try to come up with a sequence, and that sequence should be built on something a little unnatural for your fingers. Let's take this for example. We've got our minor pentatonic scale, 2 notes per string in the first position. When you're looking at a fretboard, you can classify these notes as left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. The left note being the one closer to the neck, the right note closer to the bridge. And maybe we'll build something like this. Using 3 consecutive strings, we'll ascend left, 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 and descend 2 notes on right, right. And then repeat the process from the 5th string. Left, 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 right, right. Now you might say that sequence is cool, but now it's becoming part of our vocabulary, and eventually it's going to get boring too, because we're going to overdo it. Yes, and that's why we need to spend more time figuring out new ideas. We're back into our research phase. I'm going to play a few notes. We're still in B minor pentatonic. And after a few notes, I'm going to ask myself, what am I tempted to play next? And don't do it. Now, what if instead of trying to find a note that is not really intuitive, I repeated this note. What if I repeat it again and again? Now that's kind of weird. That's definitely not something I would do, but maybe we can take that concept of repeating notes and injecting that into our playing. Now remember, when you're injecting something into your playing, you always have to inject it almost accidentally into what you're playing. You've got your home base, that's all the licks and the things that are kind of boring, but we are making it less boring by adding to them the new stuff. See, if you only added new stuff, it's going to sound a little uncomfortable, a little clumsy, and not really in control. So we still need to have a little bit of that automatic playing here. So it's really about momentarily stepping out of your comfort zone to add some of these new ideas. And speaking of that, you can also do that with scales and additional notes. And those are really going to enhance your pentatonic scales. And I talk all about that in this video. I'll meet you right there.